Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hoagies with Holland. As always, it is an absolute delight and an honor to be with this tremendous community. This first year has been such a marvelous experience for me. I can't tell you the deep emotional connection that I have formed to UVU in terms of what we've gone through together and where we're headed. And I'm delighted to have a chance now to talk in more detail to perhaps the broadest university audience that's assembled since I've been here. And I do think we have some wonderful things to talk about and celebrate, even in the midst of a fairly challenging environment. My theme for today is that we are a blossoming university. It is springtime at Utah Valley University in every sense of the word. We are literally in the time of spring, but there's a time of new and exciting growth here that I think is to be recognized and promoted and discussed here today, and so that's what I look forward to doing with you. Now, the first announcement that I would like to make is that you can access the details of this presentation online. In the spirit of springtime and greenness and our going green here at UVU, we're trying to minimize the use of paper. There will be more detailed summaries of the things that I will be talking about, so please take note of this website location for further investigation of the things that you're most interested in. Second thing that I want to talk about, many of you know, based on what I said at the State of the University, that we are doing some reconfiguration of the senior administration. Val Hale will be picking up some of Jack Christensen's old responsibilities. Other parts of Jack's portfolio are moving into academic affairs. And with that comes a new title for Val Hale as the Vice President of University Relations, with a focus on media, community relations, public relations, engaged learning, etc. That's left open this vacancy for a Vice President of Development and Alumni. And I'm proud to and excited to announce, not even the cabinet knows this, that I have gone ahead and hired a new Vice President of Development. His name is Danny Holland. Okay. Now, before you flip out that I didn't follow proper HR procedures and that this is just some act of nepotism, let me tell you how great this move is going to be. One quick anecdote. So this is a picture taken of Danny just a couple of weeks ago. You may remember the bad storm we had. It was overcast, and Paige couldn't find Danny one afternoon. She was looking all over the backyard, looking through the house. Finally looks out the window, and there's Danny out in the front yard. You can't really see it. He's got his coat on there, but he's actually in his pajama bottoms, and he's made lemonade, and it's there in a pitcher. And I think he used one of those packets that's for like a cup, and that was the basis for his lemonade in the pitcher. And he had a bunch of cups, and he was selling lemonade, and he was doing really well. Again, it's hard to see, but there he is, kind of in the right there on the edge of the road, overcast skies, raining occasionally. And I started to get calls about this from people. Do you know where your son is? And a couple of classics. One from David Yells came up to me and said, your son shook me down yesterday. I said, well, David, you're a pretty strong, confident guy. How on earth did he shake you down? And he said, well, I saw him and I knew who he was, and I thought it was so cute that I stopped by and I said, how much will it be for a cup of lemonade? And Dan said, that'll be 3 20s. So this is a guy who knows how to go for the money. Okay. Then another one of our colleagues stopped by and said, Danny, how much will that be? And he said, that'll be 20. Maybe he's coming down a little bit. Maybe the 3 20s wasn't working so well. She opens up her purse. She says, I have $2. He said, I'll take it. So I got to be surrounded by people who are going to get me the money. So Danny's the guy, and we'll work out the administrative component of it a little bit later. Well, What I'd like to do today is really three basic things. We have some terrific success stories. We don't have enough opportunities to celebrate the great successes of this campus. I want to call attention to some things. I'll say this once, I'll probably say it a couple of times. I wish we had a time to call attention to all of the successes. We don't. So please don't feel bad if your great success story didn't make it up here. I've just had to pick some what I think are emblematic successes that really do represent a whole host of terrific things that are going on this campus. Then the primary purpose of the day is to bring to the next stage, our PBA process, talk about the process we've gone through, what it's culminating in terms of next year's budget, and the kinds of things we'll be able to do or not do as a result of where we are financially. And then finally, I'd like to say just a word about the future, the immediate future, and some of the exciting things that we'll be seeing going on, that will be going on around campus in the near future. So with that, the success stories, let me begin with some programmatic successes. We will, at graduation this year, be celebrating our first master's degree graduates. This is a significant step forward, an accomplishment for our school. We'll have 15 students, this cohort graduating. This program's establishing a reputation for itself in terms of the quality of its research and application. So we're looking forward to that. That's a picture of our own Nancy Hale there, who will be part of this graduating class. The All Steinway School, we've had a successful year. Thank you. I'm going to do a lot of these, so why don't we, let me get through this and we'll save a big roaring round of applause for all of them when we get to the end. The All Steinway School, we've had a successful year fundraising and raised over $1 million so that more than 90% of our pianos are Steinway performance level pianos. I was with Bryce Ridding the other day and he was telling me how just 7 or 8 years ago how poor the instrumentation was for all of our pianos across campus, and we've really gone from 0 to 60 here in just a few short years. I've noted our K through 16 alliance. This is, I think, something critical for Utah Valley University, that we have a close working relationship with public education. If we're going to be all that we need to be as a university, we need public ed to be all that it's supposed to be. And I think we've had some real breakthroughs this year in terms of that alliance. At our initiative, we held a high school counselors conference where we invited our districts in our service region to come here. We surveyed them, what are your needs in terms of counseling? We've got experts here, how can we help you? The superintendents and the districts were very appreciative of that, and it helps make the transition from high school to UVU more seamless. So that's been very well received. We're also working on some concrete ways to deal with what have been some thorny concurrent enrollment issues in ways that I think will keep us satisfied that we're holding high degree of rigor for our college courses, but make it as accessible and user-friendly for the districts, and they're very excited about that. Some successes with respect to physical facilities. Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've had the ribbon cutting for the Norda Regional Theater, this great home for children's theater and drama. We had a terrific grand opening event. I'm here cutting the ribbon with Ty Norda, our great benefactor who made that possible. I, of course, returned the favor by, in this moment, pinching her fingers with the scissors. I hope that doesn't depress future fundraising opportunities with the Norda family. The Losi Student Success Center, what a great place this is now, this transformed space where we have over 20 departments dedicated to our core mission of student success. We get synergies with these departments being congregated by each other. I think that's the vision of Vice President Duckworth and others to make this a reality has come to fruition, and it's a terrific thing. We will be, in just a little while, having effectively our grand opening for this gorgeous new Alumni and Visitor Center. We have a home, and not just a home, a gorgeous home for our returning graduates and friends of the university to host them in a very high-class, welcoming way. So that is something that moves that important aspect of our institution forward. We are an engaged learning institution, and there's so much here that we could highlight. Again, just a few things that I think might be representative of the things that we're doing. We've conducted what I think has been a very successful business engagement strategy, convening some of the most influential, I think the most influential business leaders in this community in terms of what are the needs of business, how can the university respond to that. They've come forward with half a dozen, I think, very doable recommendations, many of which were already in line with things that we were doing or wanted to do, and have forged a close link with these business leaders and will continue to do so. One of the recommendations that we have ongoing dialogue between the business community and the university about how we develop a close working relationship to promote economic development, which has lots of impact for the university and vice versa. We had a great engaged learning project with respect to the arts with the production of The Fantastics at Sundance Summer Theater, and this was funded by our engaged learning grant process, and it looks like it's paying off. We're going to partner again with them, with Sundance again this year, but it was a terrific show. If you missed it, make sure that you get to our performance this summer. Habitat for Humanity, we continue to do this on a year-by-year basis involving lots of different aspects of the university in ways that really have a transformative effect upon an individual's life, providing them with some of the raw basics of shelter and housing in a way that they wouldn't be able to provide for themselves. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there. So many things we could talk about with our faculty and their great academic accomplishments. Some of the more notable ones that we're talking about, but again, just a few that we have time to mention. Steve Wasserbach is over in Switzerland right now. He's at the CERN laboratory. This is the ultimate particle physics laboratory in the world. He's one of an elite group of scholars that are there working on important projects. Hagen Klaus, his work on human sacrifice has gotten the attention of outlets like National Geographic and his own discipline. And he's doing this project, I think it's important to stress, without graduate student assistance. You see him pictured here with undergraduate assistance, and that's the essence of what we are trying to do and need to do here, is get our undergraduate students involved in our most critical scholarly intellectual activities, and that's a prime example of how to do that. Susan Madsen was tapped to do something that addresses a very acute problem here at UVU. It's frankly a problem throughout the state of Utah, but it's especially acute here at Utah Valley University, which is not enough of our young women end up coming to college and university in the state of Utah. It's almost the reverse everywhere outside of Utah. And so this is a study to figure out what's going on, how do we help reverse that, how do we get more women to come to Utah Valley University and throughout the state. For me, this is not only significant because of it's a tribute to Susan Madsen's aim as a scholar and her reputation that the State Office of Higher Ed would want to tap her for this, but also because of our institutional commitment to inclusive. This is one of the things that I mean by inclusive, that we reach out to those populations that aren't getting enough access to higher education and figuring out what we need to do to help them. I want to take time here to stress, having highlighted these faculty, and again, there's so many others that we could talk about, that our successes here are not just measured by those outlets and institutions outside of our own. That we have lots of people here to celebrate internally that may not get the applause of the academic community fully, or the media, or other things, but are no less important to building up the institution and what it is and what we want to become. Again, so many examples, but let me just pick 3 that I met the other day at our retirement luncheon. Peter Ulawave, who's been here for 30 years teaching mathematics, often in the summers, chaired the math department for 10 years. This is a kind of a level of dedication that has built this institution. We are where we are today because of folks like this. Diane Riley, you've all heard the magnificent performances of her student performing groups. By all accounts, when she came on board, she took our performing level groups to a whole new level of seriousness and excellence and expertise, and she's retiring. And I think it's also important to remember that our excellence and our contribution, even in the ranks of the faculty, can't be made without terrific support from staff. And Ann Cockard, 15 years as a custodian here, designated as the lead custodian. All accounts of her supervisors is that she just did extraordinary work for us. And so I just think it's important that we take time to celebrate across the university those that are engaged in magnificent successes for us, even if sometimes those aren't as readily accessible or visible to those outside of the institution. Finally, some programmatic successes. In a recent issue of Leadership Excellence magazine, there was a designation, a study for assessing programs with respect to leadership programs in different categories. In the category of leadership excellence in education, our own Utah Valley University Center for the Advancement of Leadership was number 10, keeping company with these first-rate institutions across the nation. Our home builders winners took first in a national competition. Our Great West Conference, this was really our inaugural year with that, and in many areas we dominated, bringing home 4 conference championships. So these again, I could go on and on and on about these and other areas, but let's just take a minute and collectively celebrate what a terrific institution this is. Okay, now, oh, I'm sorry, I cut something off. I got ahead of myself here. Yes, of course, our great students. How can I forget our students as an institution focused on student success? So, which we really are. Jorgen Hansen, look at that accomplishment. 4.0 GPA, already published in an outstanding national journal. Already attending conferences. He's acting more like a junior faculty member, frankly, let alone a graduate student. So doing this as an undergraduate is a remarkable accomplishment. Jaleese Hinton's great attempts to help us overcome this addiction we have to texting while driving. This has gotten a lot of state attention, been a very effective campaign on an important issue. I also want to point out someone like Larry Hanks, one of our Native American students, who's graduating in just a few weeks in technology management. He came here not really too sure about who he was, what he wanted to do, how important education was to him, but he was so enamored with UVU's attention to his community and his culture that it drew out from him a love for this place that connected his culture with his new desire to get an education. And he's now going to graduate and I'm sure be an outstanding contributor to his community and beyond. And with that, I'd like to put in a little plug about my excitement for graduation this semester. We have Larry Echohawk, Undersecretary in the Department of Interior. He's the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs and a notable Idaho politician and neighbor who will be coming and speaking to us, our keynote speaker for graduation. I'm very excited about that. So let's a round of applause for these folks as well. Okay, now we'll shift for a discussion about the PBA process. We had some revision to the process. As I came on board, I was impressed with what I saw that this institution had done to make the budgeting process as open and collaborative as possible. But there were some things, at least in this first year, that I thought we should tweak. We made the early conversations much more streamlined, and I think that was an effective use of time. One of the key things, though, was that as part of this, I rolled out my integration vision, if you will. And again, this is familiar territory for many of you, but let me just take a second to briefly revisit what I mean by integration and therefore how it played into and then drove the rest of the PBA cycle. As I showed up here, I sensed there had been an awful lot of tremendous work that had been done about thinking about mission, vision, values, who we are as an institution, where we wanted to go. The challenge is that this had built up over time, and so we have all of these different documents and ideas and language about who it is we are and want to be, and it was getting hard to kind of remember and process all of that. I thought it would be important not to radically change that, but to build upon it, synthesize it, perhaps adding or tweaking a few things here and there as it's relevant and important for the new situation we find ourselves in. And so that's what we did in a series of processes that began at the convocation and an address to the faculty, where we sought feedback, a leadership retreat where we sought additional feedback, other online options for giving input. And what we came up with was a more simplified story about who we are, around some very simple, straightforward words: that we are a serious institution, that we take learning very seriously, that we strive our best not only on the academic side of things but across the board, that we are inclusive, that we're committed to diversity, that we reach out to different populations, and that we especially see ourselves reaching out and providing a point of access for people to higher education that otherwise wouldn't have that. And that we are an engaged institution. We're connected to our communities, and we're focused on applied hands-on learning as much as is possible and is applicable to our various disciplines. And that all of this is focused on one core thing: our students. They are our reason for being here, is to help provide them with the skills and the content and the tools that they need to have a better life, to go on well beyond where they can go today, to open up whole new vistas for them. That's why we are here, and that we're doing these other things in order to promote that. Now, the sense is that these four things basically captured most of the essence, most of the substance, if you will, of these prior documents and all the little detail that went with them, and that you could literally take that detail and easily plug it into one of these four categories, with the exception of a few other things. And those things we suggested fell under what might be considered simply operational imperatives. They're just things that big institutions need to do in order to accomplish this story. And we need to do them effectively and efficiently. So we need to secure resources, getting Danny Holland going for the money. We need to manage all this growth that we're having, and we need to figure out constantly and relentlessly how we get more efficient, how we improve the quality of our services, how we do things cheaper and better as fast as we can. And so this then became the framework, if you will, for our conversations. As people went back to their divisions, what do we need to do to get more serious? How do we become and promote engaged learning? How can we become a more inclusive institution? What are the things we need to do to promote student success? And what are the operational imperatives we have in order to achieve those things? So that's where we are. We're in the PBA process. We've now gone through those conversations, had a State of the University address, and then went through the legislative session. And that's what I'd like to focus on now for just a minute. In terms of that legislative session, that becomes a really critical component of this, determining really how much money we have to go deploy against those things that we'd like to do. We began the session with a robust set of hopes and requests as designated here. Our number one priority, my number one priority for the year, was that we secure a science building as a way to help us move forward on a number of our key dimensions. We knew that, given the tough economic times, that we weren't going to get any additional monies for the budget, but we just were pleading that we wouldn't get additional cuts. And that was the stance we were taking in concert with other schools in the Utah system of higher education. Compensation, we know that we weren't able to do compensation last year. It's been a while since we've been able to really adequately provide the compensation we think people so richly deserve, and so we made a pitch for that, money for operations and maintenance, and then supporting various initiatives of the region's budget. Well, those were our hopes. Those hopes butt up against reality. It's a very difficult time right now. And we have to be realistic about that, and we knew that that was the challenge going into it. We didn't get close to anything like all that we had hoped for, but I do feel really good about what we did get. We did get a science building, and we also were successful in making arguments for no more cuts, and in fact for us, we came out with a little more money. I'll explain that in just a minute. Let me say just a word about the science building. This is the design that we've got. The design is now complete. We will start to break ground for that, hopefully in June, depending on how the bid process goes. This is a great story of institutional success. I think it starts with Sam Rushforth and the efforts of the College of Science. First of all, to build up a program worthy of this kind of investment, that the College of Science has worked very hard, I believe, to hire outstanding faculty, to have good quality expectations of its students, to stay connected to the various disciplines, and to be an attractive options for students who want to go on to med school and professional school or graduate school of some kind. As well as the health professions. And so it's been a great success story. It's grown, and we need to accommodate that. And they've had the vision for this building, have been pushing for it. They've been patient when it fell off lists and kept coming back to say we needed to have this happen. The story continues with Liz Hitch and her great leadership as interim, going up to the state legislature and pleading for planning money, which was a big part of the sell, that we had this planning money, we didn't want to let it go to waste, we need to build on it while the window is still there. And Val Peterson and his yeoman's efforts through all of this, working closely with Sam and Liz, and then this year with me. We spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill making the case in a year when the governor told us we wouldn't get any buildings. We had similar vibes on both sides of the House, that this was just not a year for buildings, but that wasn't acceptable to us. We kept telling them, we have to have this building. If you expect us to be the university that's going to handle growth, if you also expect us to move forward academically, become more serious and rigorous academically, and to provide engaged learning opportunities with laboratories and whatnot, which are the essence of engaged learning, we have to have this building, and we can't wait for a year. I think the combination of all those things and some key leadership from some of our friends in the community and the legislature were what made the difference. So I can't help myself. Let's stop. We got to celebrate this great accomplishment. So. Now, with respect to the tax fund support, it's kind of a complicated story. I'll try to step you through it as straightforwardly and simply as possible. If you'll see the top line is kind of the baseline of where we were in July 08, where our budget was in July 08. Over the course of that next year, because of the economic crisis, we took a 17% budget cut. And let me just say here that that was a tough thing to do. And it was especially tough at UVU because the cabinet at the time, again under the direction of Liz Hitch, made the decision that while the state was offering some one-time monies to kind of fill the gap, at least partially, that we would go ahead and take the full 17%, recognizing that there was a good chance things might not get better and in fact could get a lot worse. And so we implemented the full 17%. I know that many of you have been affected by this in some respect, that you lost personnel, that you lost support, you've had to take on additional duties. It was not an easy thing to do. And that's where we were in July of '09 at 17%. As we went into the legislative session this year, we began with some initial signals from the legislature. They were going to turn that 17% into 19%. And the story got worse from there, not better. As the legislature unfolded, there was then a serious move at one point by a key member of the legislature to stake out a position where the legislature would cut us 22%. So that would have been on top of another 5% on top of the 17%. This looked like a very dark moment. And this is what we talked about in State of the University. This is what we were facing as we went into the PBA process, saying, keep your request fairly modest this year because we don't know where things are going to go, and it could get worse. Fortunately, and I give a lot of credit to Governor Gary Herbert, frankly, who said he was going to make higher education a chief priority, and who worked with legislators that caught the vision that said we can't do this to higher education, that whittled away and whittled away and whittled away that proposed 22% cut down to 12.5%. Now here's where the foresight of our great cabinet comes into play. Because unlike other institutions, we took the full 17%. Other institutions that treated that backfill money as a way to plug the hole of the base budget are now, in many cases, still facing cuts this year as they're trying to find how they finance that 12% cut. Because we had already taken it and actually gone beyond it, by virtue of coming back to 12.5%, we now come forward with an extra $3 million for this year. And I think I'd like to ask Liz Hitch and the rest of the cabinet to please stand and be recognized for that leadership. So we face this in a year where places like Alabama and Massachusetts are taking a 20% cut. We're down at 12. We've got some extra money. Now to continue with that story, we did raise tuition this year. Part of it was mandated by the state at 1.5% increase. This was done to partially help us with a state retirement rate increase and medical premium increase. So on top of that, that brings in nearly $1 million. We had a second tier tuition increase. This is a form of tuition that the institutions have more control over. We made some recommendations. We met with the students, got their input, and came forward with a proposal for a 4.5% increase for undergraduate residents. This is, by the way, the lowest tuition increase of any institution in the state. We worked very hard to keep this down as low as possible, but recognizing that we do need to do some things to mature as a university. And to the students' credit, they said, we recognize that. We know that we need to share some of that responsibility because it redounds to our good, and so they affirmed our tuition proposal there for 4.5%. We stayed lower. We were prepared to go higher. If the legislature would have taken additional cuts, we would have gone higher so that we could have minimized programmatic reduction. As it stands, we can take the money raised by second-tier tuition and pour it into certain operational imperatives that the students care about, as well as student success initiatives that I'll talk about in just a minute. So that brings in a little over an additional $2 million. The big story here, though, is our growth. We've grown 20% in the last 2 years, and just based on our enrollment growth for this year, we'll be bringing in $9 million. We also have some growth. Let me summarize then. So if you combine these things together, we've got effectively $15 million of new base revenue that against which we can deploy here at the university, plus some remaining funds from last year's growth. So what are we going to do about this? Well, after we got the rosier picture than we were anticipating from the legislature, I asked the vice presidents to get back with their areas and the division heads and department leaders to see if there would be any adjustments that they would make to their PBA requests in the fall. Are there some additional priorities you'd have us consider even at this late date? What would those priorities do? What would they be? I want to commend the vice presidents and the leaders across the university for not only responding quickly but thoughtfully, to not just throw back a bunch of requests in kind of grab bag fashion, but to again think about it. What are the key things that we really need to have that would best move us forward, and be reasonable, recognizing that not everybody can have everything. So we had those conversations, and now we're ready here at Hoagies with Holland to talk about how we're moving forward with these various requests. Again, these will follow under the language then and the concepts of the integration model. So we take from that integration model, and again, this is what we did back in the fall. I just want to reaffirm this is our thinking about it here. But we pull out those key concepts of serious, engaged, inclusive, student success, and operational imperatives as the guidelines for what it is we want to focus on as a university. So with respect to serious, I think for me the big story is that we are absolutely committed to becoming an even more serious institution of higher learning. That's what we are. We have to pour the money into that to build us up to handle the student demand that we have to provide excellent training and instruction for them. So we will be adding 44 new salaried lecturer and faculty positions in the coming year. You can see, I'll give you just a second to kind of take in all the areas. This is spread all across campus. Again, it was a very collaborative input from the deans and the academic affairs, and working closely with me and all of our priorities mixing together about where we were going to hire. And I feel really good about what this is going to mean in terms of enhancing our ability to hire a whole new cadre of faculty that will help us with our instruction. In addition to the faculty, I think it's important to note that we are, let me just say here, these slides, they have a lot of information on them. Again, I've given you the website if you want to go back in more detail if I'm moving too fast. As we go through these next few slides, I'm just going to highlight a couple of items and assume that you will be reading quickly and kind of taking in the other bullet points that may be more relevant to you. Scholarship support, that we are putting money behind attracting the brightest and the best, adjust our scholarship grid. We've got more students who are who have that kind of preparation that deserve and need that support, especially if we're going to recruit them here to the institution. Same for athletics. Presidential lecture series, we've got that launched this year. I was really gratified how that worked. We had Gordon Wood, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, who came and spoke to a packed house at the Reagan Theater. It was well attended. Our students asked great questions, challenging questions, a robust debate reflective of a great academic environment. So again, these are just a few of the things you can take in, some of the other things that we will be doing there to promote this institution as a more serious place of higher learning and excellence across all that we do. Engaged. I've already spoken a bit about our business engagement strategy. One of the recommendations that they came forward with dovetailed very nicely with thoughts that were already bubbling up within academic affairs and my office in terms of where we might go forward strategically, and that is to do something with Asia. As we become more globally engaged, which we need to do, our students need to do in this, as some scholars say, this flat world in which we live that's been made flat due to technology. We're more interconnected than ever. We have to have students who are better educated in the ways outside of not just our immediate community, but our region and nation. And that one of the most important areas we could focus on is China, given its significance for politics, military, and economics. So we are moving forward aggressively on initiating a Chinese studies program and hiring 2 new faculty to help us do that. With respect to being engaged, again, a number of things that we could do. We've had some wonderful success with a program to have various departments become service learning departments, and there's a formal process for doing that, and it's a good incentive to get departments oriented to the service learning model. We want to put some more money behind that. One very practical note here, we do plan to switch lots C and D so that we can have that lower lot more accessible to our outside community. So that will become visitor parking, so that's easier for, if we are going to be this community engaged institution, we've got to make it easy and hospitable for community members and others to come onto campus, and so we're moving forward with that. Inclusive. Let me, I want to say a couple of things here. I just have one slide on inclusive, and I don't want that to be, I want to say something about that, and I don't want, because I don't want it to be misunderstood, even as I give a little bit of a speech here about, I hope next year we have more to say about inclusive. And I do think when it comes to seriousness and engagement and student success, we have some built-in champions on campus whose you know, kind of livelihood and reason for being depend upon those things, and so we promote that, operational imperatives we all face. But to be more inclusive, we're going to have to take more initiative. There needs to be more vision and more leadership. I'm putting some things on here, but next year I hope that you all will come forward with more ideas about how we become a more inclusive institution, recognizing that we're ready to put money behind it. But it's not just going to happen as naturally and organically as some of these other things. So I do think this area is a little bit thin. Having said that, I want to affirm that it's absolutely critical and important. Also that there are other things that we have talked about and we'll talk about here that help with the inclusive front, even if they're not necessarily housed under this particular slide. So let me just say a couple of things about that, and I have a short note I want to read. We are going to fund a new position for the We Care Center so that we can alleviate the immense pressures on that effectively skeletal staff so that they can go out and secure more resources. I'd also like to fund some money, fund a project here to do a study about what could we do with respect to daycare services. The We Care Center currently helps us with two key dimensions of inclusive. It serves our underserved population, and it also addresses this issue of women attending the university. We have data that tells us the #1 challenge for many women in coming to the university is that they don't have the ability to have help with child care. And so I want to make this a priority, but we want to do it thoughtfully. We'll be running a process to see what we can do, how far we can go, but I want to get that started. I've also set aside some money just for presidential initiatives that, again, if this conversation sparks any ideas, I'm open and listening to what we need to do to help us become a more inclusive place. And final, let me read this note. I just got this week, and it really was gratifying to me. And I hope that, and it's important for me to read it here because I don't want anyone to misunderstand as I'm coming on board and as we're talking about becoming a more serious institution. We're going to pour money into more faculty and expect rigor and high quality with our academic programs. I'm absolutely fundamentally committed that we don't lose this point of access that we've become to underserved populations and to groups and categories of people that otherwise may not get it. So I love the spirit of this note. I'm going to read it. It's from Judge Lindsay, who's the judge in the juvenile court here in the area. Dear Matt, one of my kids, a young Hispanic boy, proudly marched into court today with a letter of acceptance from Utah Valley University. I've been seeing him for several years. He's had a rough life, and he's the first person in his family who's even thought about college. He was so proud of the handsome letter he received from you. It looks like a certificate of accomplishment to be framed. I was impressed. Your letter was so personal to him. She goes on to say how excited he is to take up my challenge for doing some summer reading to discuss at my home in the fall, which is an invitation we send out to all freshmen. She goes on to write, Utah Valley University offers a second chance for many of the young people who end up in my court as a result of poor choices, no family support, or immaturity to create options for themselves. I salute you and everyone working with you. I love the vibes emanating from UVU. We must not lose this, even as we move forward and become a more excellent institution of higher learning. Okay, student success. We know that one of the key things for student success is having good advising. And to have good advising, it has to be done in the right way, in the right ratios. And given some of the cuts we've had to make, those ratios have been going the wrong direction, so we want to spend some resources to readjust those advising ratios. We also want to hire an additional person to help us specifically with student success and retention, who can really help us focus on those programs that will take our at-risk students, keep them here, and help mentor them all the way through to success. One of the challenges that we hear a lot, I've heard a lot, is the lack of student employment opportunities. So when I saw a number of these things come in, I was really delighted to say, yes, that's exactly what we need to do. If you're thinking, well, how were those things chosen? Why didn't I get more student hourly wages? These were basically just the ones that were requested. We're funding all of them. So just know that that's a priority. If that's a way that you think in the future you could have some help in your area and it provides a good experience for the students and some additional employment, I think these are the kinds of things we can do to help students, so many of whom need to work while they're in school, but it keeps them here on campus, makes that effort more efficient. The one new thing is, you'll see at the bottom, President's Cabinet interns. I want our cabinet to lead by example. I'm asking each of the vice presidents, myself, to think about hiring an intern each year to be involved with our work and establishing a program that will do some mentoring even outside their daily responsibilities and working with the respective cabinet members. So finding ways to help involve students in what we do. It's efficient and it's engaged and it's focused on student success and therefore a real priority. Okay, now to shift to operational imperatives. On the compensation, I think it's important to stress here that the state did not fund across-the-board salary increases for anybody in higher ed or any state institution, any state agency. And so we are not in a position, like every other institution in the USHE system, to do any across-the-board pay raises. That's just the difficulty of the economic situation in which we remain. However, with some of these additional monies that we do have, there are some things that we are doing with respect to compensation that I think are worth pointing out. That we are making efforts to meet the difference in our medical premium, and we've made adjustments to the plan and tapping into our reserves and using some tuition money to do that. And I think you've heard that before in other venues. State retirement rate, we're using first-year tuition to help close the gap on the state on our retirement package, so that doesn't fall behind. Then there are some targeted things that I think we need to do. The first is that we've got to do more to get our adjunct pay rate up to a more adequate level. So for every three credit hour class, we're adding $250 to the adjunct pay rate. This will affect a substantial number of the teachers on our campus. I don't think it's the end of what we want to do to help adjuncts, but it's a substantial first start. And then we'll have some monies to be coordinated in terms of dealing with, in a very targeted way, if we're really out of balance on some equity issues or with respect to retention issues in the faculty, staff, and executive ranks. We've got some money set aside to do that, and there will be more information coming forward with leaders about how we'll be thinking about rolling that out. Other operational imperatives. I know that UVU is famous for having small classes. I love that. We want to retain that as much as possible. But the size that we've become suggests that we do have to open ourselves up to, in a selective and careful way, doing some large classes. We don't want to adopt a wholesale model of large GE classes, but this can be done. It can be done effectively. I've seen it done effectively, but we are trying to put a little bit of money here into a pilot study to figure out where we can do it, how we can do it effectively, setting up the right incentive structures so that this can help us alleviate some of our pressures with growth. We also need to figure out how to use our summer schedule more effectively. This is the physical facilities sit here far too underutilized over our summer term. And we need to push more and more of our resources, our teaching and our student demand into summer term. So we're creating some monies here moving some monies here to give the right incentives for salary structure so that we can do more teaching in the summer. We obviously can't do anything with respect to becoming more serious and promoting student success unless we have key critical staff support around us. So there are a number of positions that we will be funding. Again, these were prioritized by division, and you can see the areas where we'll be hiring in those areas. As we are an engaged institution, it's vital that we stay connected with the world around us, and more that means being electronically connected. And so we've got to make the investments for cutting-edge technology that will keep us connected and help us not only stay connected but be efficient. There's more that we can do with technology, but that requires some support. So we are investing in various processes, including the move to Outlook. I was warned this would get a mixed reaction. We're doing it. I know some of you have grown up with GroupWise. It's what you know. It's hard to make these adjustments. I don't diminish the fact that it's going to be a little bit painful, but it's not a product that's growing with us. It's going the wrong direction. We have to have a product that will allow us to stay up with the rest of the world, communicating efficiently and effectively. We'll have more information on that moving forward. So, we will be eliminating the chargebacks for facilities and media setup, meaning we'll pay for that internally. I know that was getting more expensive and a bit cumbersome. So we hope that that will allow you to move forward more efficiently. Okay, with respect to communications, I want to, a couple of things that we will do here. One is to hire someone who can help us stay better coordinated, in particular to coordinate UV announce materials and keep what will be an effective university master calendar. One of the things that we're discovering is how much we're overlapping, double booking, not staying in close coordination with each other. If we have a good cohesive master calendar, I think it will allow all of us to pursue our various projects more effectively. Budget stabilization. I do want to stress that going back to that slide where we've got so much, where we've got more money than we were expecting, we're not going to spend all of it. We can't. It is springtime at UVU. It's a moment where we've got some ability for some growth and to avoid some cuts, but we do not know what the future holds. We do not yet know what's going to happen to the economy, and so we need to hold some of that back for a rainy day fund so that if things don't go well next year, that we can protect ourselves and hedge against what could be potential cuts at that time. So you will see some things relative to that I think will be important as we move forward discussing those things. So we will talk about facilities now, some great success stories with facilities. We're going to repair the fountain in the courtyard. I mean, you've seen the structures for that. The ground has been broken for the track already. I think it's also important to note here, we're going to hire a bunch of new faculty and staff. We don't have a lot of room for them. So we are going to have to create some modular office space for the new positions. So we've been thinking ahead. We've indicated that already to leaders to start thinking about it right now. figure out how we are going to be able to physically house some of these people. When we have the new science building, that will help significantly alleviate that pressure, but we're 18 months away from being able to enter that building. I can't resist here while we're on facilities noting what I thought was the #1 PBA request for the year, hands down. Excuse me, I'm going the wrong direction here. We are in desperate need of a lawnmower, okay? And apparently what we needed, according to Jim Michaelis, was a 16-foot mower. And I'm happy to report that not only were we funding it, but we've actually found it. So, well, I think that, again, you may have additional questions. I direct you to the website for more details. If you didn't see everything that you were looking at, it is a more flush year than we were expecting. Having said that, we weren't able to do everything that we wanted to do. Good strategy, a good strategic organization is an organization that makes choices and that husbands its resources appropriately. So to the extent we did as much as we thought we could do with prudence and judgment, I feel very good about what this is going to allow us to do to move forward as a university, and I'll say more about that in just a moment. But for right now, let me just, as we wrap up, say just a couple of things about the future, some immediate kind of housekeeping issues. One is we've got applications for UV Self coming up. This is a wonderful process for a cadre of promising employees here to have really direct encounters with senior leadership, exposure to outside experts in some small group settings that really help advance leadership skills and opportunities. If you're interested in this or have people interested in this, please make note of the application deadline here. And the VPs are really the folks to work through with respect to this opportunity. Summer universities coming together. Registration opens up today. I strongly encourage you to get signed up. This is a great university moment. It's also a great chance for us to engage in a university-wide service project to show our commitment to the local community, and I hope that you'll take opportunity to do that. We've got our employee appreciation night coming up, UVU versus BYU. No one needs to worry about who I will be cheering for in that game. We've got our accreditation study that's underway, and please make note of these important dates. We really appreciate, I know this is coming out of the height of a number of you to generate the reports and do the reviews that are critical to doing this, but this is so important that we get this right. If we don't, it really, there are few things that can undermine more our reputation than to have a bad accreditation experience. And so please, again, take note of that, be supportive in your own events or in your areas if your people are called upon to do this. And then I think it's worth a couple of things that haven't come up that are just worth noting in terms of the future. Our science groundbreaking we anticipate will be early June if we, again, assuming the bid process works properly. We've got other exciting things. The MBA launch, our third master's program, will be this fall. We've got two outstanding new deans that will join our ranks. I want to thank Dr. Liz Hitch and others who helped run that process. These two deans have outstanding academic credentials, but they also love our vision and our mission. They're committed to engaged learning and to a teaching undergraduate focus, and I think they will really help move forward their respective colleges. You will also see a fairly ambitious project to change the wayfinding signs around campus. You can see the picture of one of our current signs on campus. These were originally signs donated to us back around the time of the Olympics. Right to the adjacent to it, you'll see the sketching for the kind of signage that we will want to go to. We've got the money put away for that. You'll see that happening across campus, and I think it will, again, really enhance the aesthetics and the look of the place. It will look more serious and do for us what some of our current signage is not doing. The track should be complete by this fall, and you already see that that's underway. We've got the Sundance Summer Theater, the production of Big River, which again is a great engaged learning opportunity to take advantage of. So again, I could keep rolling here with all of the things, all of the energy and excitement. Let me just close, again, come back to this image. I said that the theme for my remarks is that we're a blossoming university. The thought for this came to me actually just in the last couple of days as I was thinking about the extraordinary position that we're in. Just a few months ago, we were looking at the possibility of a 22% budget cut, meaning more layoffs, meaning more programmatic reductions. Instead, we find ourselves with a $45 million science building. We find ourselves with an extra $3 million of appropriated funds on top of our enrollment growth monies that are going to allow us to build up this university. We're a young university. We've got room for growth. We went through a painful pruning process last year, but I think that was an important process. And as any good gardener knows, when you prune things, you don't just expect to grow back exactly what was hived off. You grow back for strength. You grow back for beauty. You grow back for what will most enhance the life and vitality of the plant before you. And I'm convinced that's what we were doing. I was thinking about that, sharing that thought, commending the cabinet again for their courage and discipline in doing some pruning last year, as hard as that was. But that pruning now allows us to come back with more strength. And then a couple of days ago, we had an important delegation of visitors from Spain, some presidents of universities, vice presidents, someone from their Ministry of Education, a very high-level delegation. And they brought me what has been the most beautiful gift I've received so far as president. Here, this is a picture of it. It's this gorgeous oak base that's polished with this silver-leafed tree that's just starting to bud. And so these images were just coming forward to me again and again and seem so reflective of where we are. And so I do just want to, again, take off my hat to all of you, to the cabinet, but to the rest of you who've made the painful decisions you made last year, who hunkered down, you've worked hard, you've taken on additional responsibilities, you've been patient, you've not been whiny. As we've moved forward now, we do have some extra monies that we're going to put into those areas that I think really grow and enhance, strengthen both the roots of the university and the branches, and that we will move forward with even more vitality, more energy, living up to the outstanding potential that I think this institution has. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of it. I absolutely love working with you and love what we've been able to do this year, and see a great, very optimistic, powerful future ahead for this institution. Thank you very much.